Welcome to Blood Runs Cold, the channel where horror fans gather to explore the darkest corners of the world. If you crave disturbing stories, chilling visuals, or unforgettable nightmares, you've just found your new favorite haunt. In 2012, I was working as the lead diagnostics technician at an automotive shop in Fremont. It was a typical day and my shift started at 7 a.m. sharp. I parked across the street and walked into the shop to greet my boss when my phone rang. The call brought devastating news. My grandfather had just passed away in the hospital. Overwhelmed, I quickly said hi and bye to my boss and headed straight home. Days earlier, strange events began unfolding. It was a Saturday and my dad and I were working at our house. Throughout the day, peculiar things happened. One incident involved a garage light that repeatedly turned itself on, even after we made certain it was switched off. We would leave the garage only to return and find the light inexplicably lit again. Later that same day, my dad received mysterious text messages from an unknown number with a 209 area code. The message urgently read, "Mi jefe está muy malo. You need to come now." Alarmed, we quickly packed up and headed to pick up my sister, and then all drove together to Manteca in my parents' Honda Civic. During the drive, my dad received additional messages, including one that asked, "Are you getting my messages?" My dad replied, "Yes." Upon our arrival, we discovered that none of my uncles had sent those texts, and none had recently changed their phone numbers. Days later at the hospital, my sister went through my dad's phone to find the conversation had inexplicably vanished. My dad never deleted messages. After my grandfather's passing, my family gathered at my grandmother's house in Manteca, where the atmosphere was heavy with grief. Hours later, my dad suggested we head back home to prepare a room for my grandma to stay with us. Agreeing, my sister, my girlfriend at the time, and I got into my sister's 2012 Honda Civic. My sister drove, I sat in the front passenger seat, and my girlfriend sat behind my sister. My parents followed closely behind in their own Civic. As we drove down a quiet street, I noticed a rosary hanging from my sister's rearview mirror, knotted tightly. I casually asked her, "Why do you tie the rosary in such a tight knot?" She responded, "I don't like it dangling too low when I drive." Not thinking much of it, I returned to scrolling through my phone. We approached a red light, preparing to turn left onto the freeway. Suddenly, my sister screamed. I barely had time to look up from my phone before blinding headlights filled my vision. An oncoming Volkswagen, traveling at nearly 60 miles per hour, swerved into our lane, barreling head-on toward our stationary car. The impact was immediate and fierce. My parents, who witnessed everything from behind, later recounted how the collision was so intense it lifted our car's rear wheels off the ground and threw us completely out of our lane. Inside the car, everything turned smoky, and my ears rang painfully. A giant check engine light blinked furiously on the dashboard. In the stunned silence following the crash, I opened my eyes and saw 3 rosary beads resting in my lap. My heart sank. I thought to myself, "Oh no, Stephanie's rosary broke." My memory at this point becomes hazy, but I distinctly recall a woman dressed entirely in white scrubs, like a nurse, opening my passenger door and calmly instructing us to move quickly to safety across the street. According to my parents, however, there was no woman in white. We simply walked across the street on our own. Shaken and injured, my family frantically checked each other for injuries. I had a fractured sternum. My sister suffered 2 broken heels, and my girlfriend had internal bruising. Despite the severity of the crash, we had survived. As we stood waiting for the ambulance, my mother's eyes narrowed curiously as she pointed to my back pocket. "What's that sticking out of your pocket?" she asked, puzzled. Confused, I reached behind me, feeling something solid. Carefully, I pulled it out. My heart skipped a beat. In my hand was my sister's rosary, completely intact. The very same rosary I'd seen tied tightly to the rearview mirror, the same one I thought had shattered moments earlier. Somehow, impossibly, it had ended up safely tucked into my back pocket. To this day, none of us can explain how it happened, nor did we ever see the woman in white again. But deep down, I believe someone, or something, was watching over us that day. So, the year was 1997, and I'd just gone through a divorce with my now ex-wife. It was my first night back at home, only it didn't feel like home at all. When I pulled into the driveway, the old wooden structure from the 1800s had not one light on, and resembled a mass of black, a void that only took the shape of a house by coincidence. This place had been a place of warmth, of love, of connection. There wasn't a single sound as I walked through the old house that was once home. The bare walls that had once shown an array of framed pictures of what was once a happy family stared back at me with a blank expression, mocking me with eyes that were left from the nails that had been removed. A lot of the furniture that once was now gone, making the inside of the structure look even more vast, more cold, as if I didn't already feel small. After my initial walkthrough of the foreign tundra, I set my keys on the kitchen counter, took my boots off, and headed upstairs to my bedroom to try and sleep. I had no clue what was in store for me that night. As I made my way up the stairs, the wooden treads squeaked and creaked as they compressed, just as they had many times before. But this night, it was different. The sounds were more visceral, like they were telling me, warning me not to ascend, but I proceeded onward. I made my way to my bedroom and laid down on my back, clothes still on. I hadn't the energy nor wherewithal to be comfortable. There I spent hours in a daze, with thoughts and memories racing like a ribbon of film on a Super 8 projector. The only sound in my company was that of the ringing in my ears due to tinnitus. I couldn't fall asleep, and the red glow from my alarm clock never ceased to remind me so. 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, then around 2 a.m. it happened. As I lay there, lost in my thoughts, suddenly I heard a long smash coming from the kitchen downstairs that shook the floor beneath me, sending a chill up my spine, the hairs on my arms standing on end. I was frozen in fear. The ringing in my ears from tinnitus ceased, leaving the only sounds being that of my heavy breathing and the ever-increasing rate of my heartbeat. As I lay there, stiff as a statue, more noises came, barely audible at first. I couldn't tell what it was, but then they became louder and louder. Footsteps. The sounds of the footsteps were slow, heavy, methodical. As I lay there frozen, I could hear another sound that accompanied the footsteps. There was the sound of what I can only describe as the breathing and growling of what could only come from a monster, a demon, and it was gonna rip me apart. The sound got louder and louder. Each step shook the whole house, sending the most intense feeling of fear I've ever felt in my life. I heard another sound that sounded all too familiar now. Squeaking, accompanied by a loud thud. I knew now that this thing was making its way up the stairs now. This thing must have been 800 pounds. The breathing, growling, and thus got louder and louder, closer. I finally got the last little bit of courage that remained and ran into my closet and grabbed my 12-gauge shotgun and racked a shell into the chamber. Suddenly, there was silence. Nothing. I was so scared that I stayed in my closet until sunrise. I finally decided to make my way downstairs, shotgun still in hand, to find that the front door was wide open and the silverware drawer had been pulled out completely from the cabinet and was lying upside down, silverware strewn all about the kitchen floor. I know that this seems hard to believe, but this 100% is true and was not a dream, and I've never taken drugs in my life. I'm a man of faith, and I believe that this happened because I had lost faith during the divorce, was severely depressed, in a dark place, and hadn't been going to church. I started going to church every Sunday, and I haven't had a visit from that thing ever since. I still live in the same old house today, and although there are many other stories I could tell, none of them are as terrifying or as visceral as that experience. I never believed in those old village ghost stories. You grow up hearing all these tales from your aunties and grandmas about Pontianak, Toyol, and Balan, all from the deads. They say it's a woman who practices black magic, and her head detaches from her body, floating with her entrails hanging underneath, flying at night looking for blood, especially from pregnant women. Sounds like pure nonsense, but it's true. If you saw one, you should see it to believe. This happened when we all moved to a new town. I was staying in a small village during the school holidays. My cousin had just given birth to her second son, and our whole extended family was staying at her house to help out. Well, everything was normal during the day. Loud, happy, typical village vibes. I don't know if it's in your culture, but mine, yes. But at night, something felt off. The dogs started acting strange, just a village dogs. We have like 5 dogs, barking at nothing at the same point of view and non-stop. It's so annoying. Every night, midnight, my uncle said it was bad timing, bad spirits. He even hung garlic and thorns from the lemon tree he plucked around the windows, especially near the room where my cousin and her newborn slept. I laughed at him, honestly, thinking it's just superstition, thought he was just being dramatic or trying to make the room smell nice. There was one night I woke up thirsty and went to the kitchen to get some water. The kitchen window didn't have any curtain, just old metal grills. As I was drinking, I heard a wet, squelching sound like a huge slug being stepped on. I tried to take a peek out the window. There it was, a woman's head floating, her long hair whipping in the wind, her eyes wide and bloodshot. Her organs dangled underneath like they were alive. Her tongue moved like she was tasting the air. It's so ugly to say, even remembering it is making me want to puke. She wasn't flying fast, just floating slowly toward the house, like mosquitoes praying for blood. But it flew toward the baby's room. I froze and my legs could not move. I couldn't breathe either. Then the garlic my uncle had hung right outside the window, it started to burn, like literally burn. Smoke started coming off it, like it was reacting to her presence, the flying head. The Balan hissed this awful, screechy sound and turned away, disappearing into the trees very fast. I didn't sleep that night. I still don't know if anyone believed me, but I know what I saw. I believe now why old people never joke about these things, because it's real. Not everyone believes in these kinds of things, but they actually exist among us. Tell me if you ever saw one. I want to hear it too.